She always comes back. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day, when the world stops moving so fast and the noise she chased finally quiets down, she'll think of you. It won't be dramatic. It'll come softly, like a memory sneaking in between songs she used to play when things still felt warm. She'll remember the way you looked at her, not like she was perfect, but like she was enough. The way your silence made her feel seen, how your calm steadied her chaos. She'll scroll through old conversations, reading them slower this time, realizing that those words weren't just messages, they were moments. Real ones. You won't be waiting anymore. Life will have moved forward, maybe slower than you wanted, but it will have taught you everything she couldn't. You'll have learned that some people leave not because they stop loving you, but because they don't know how to stay when things get real. You'll have accepted that peace doesn't chase noise. It simply steps back, lets the storm burn itself out, and waits for clarity. She'll remember the version of herself that only existed around you, the softer, lighter version she buried trying to be loved somewhere else. She'll miss that, not realizing that the peace she keeps searching for was never in the new places she ran to, it was in the quiet she left behind with you. And when she comes back, it won't be for the same reason she left. It'll be because she finally understands the difference between attention and connection, between being wanted and being valued. But you'll have grown past needing to be remembered. You'll just smile, because deep down, you always knew, love doesn't prove itself in who returns, it reveals itself in who never had to leave. There was a time when her name alone could shift your whole world. A single text, a late-night call, even a thought of her, and suddenly everything else stopped mattering. You would have crossed oceans for her without asking if she'd meet you halfway. That was before you learned the cost of giving too much to someone who didn't know what to do with what you gave. Before you understood that not everyone who says they want love is ready to hold it when it arrives. You poured out everything: time, energy, patience, trying to show her that love wasn't meant to be a war. But she kept choosing battles over peace, chaos over calm. You tried to save something that didn't want saving, to fix cracks that someone else kept making deeper. Then one day, it clicked. You realized peace was never supposed to be earned, it was supposed to be shared. You stopped trying to prove your worth to someone blind to it. You started protecting your energy like it was sacred, because it was. You began to see that the kind of love that drains you isn't love, it's dependency dressed as desire. You learned to walk away, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself more. And in that silence, something inside you shifted. You became your own validation. You stopped chasing and started attracting. The weight of your own presence became enough. You looked at yourself in the mirror one morning and didn't see the man she left, you saw the man who survived it. The man who no longer needed to be chosen to feel complete. The man who finally understood that losing her wasn't the ending, it was the beginning of finding yourself. Healing didn't come gently. It wasn't a straight line or some magical moment when everything suddenly made sense. It came in waves, some small, some violent. You'd wake up fine one day, convincing yourself you'd moved on, and then out of nowhere, a scent, a song, a memory would drag you right back to the beginning. It wasn't the loss of her that hurt the most, it was the loss of who you were when you still believed love was enough. You started realizing that healing wasn't about forgetting her, it was about remembering yourself before you lost pieces trying to keep her. There were nights when the silence felt heavy, when you'd stare at the ceiling and replay every conversation, every moment you could have done differently. But time taught you that pain doesn't go away because you understand it, it fades when you stop feeding it. Slowly, you stopped checking her profile, stopped searching for her face in strangers. You learned that closure doesn't always come from the person who broke you, sometimes it comes from the version of you who refuses to stay broken. You began to enjoy your own company again. Coffee in the morning felt peaceful instead of empty. Long walks turned into therapy. You found beauty in small things, sunlight through windows, laughter that came from nowhere, music that didn't hurt to hear. The weight on your chest didn't disappear overnight, but you carried it differently. You learned to breathe through it. One day, you caught your reflection and didn't see heartbreak anymore, you saw strength. You saw a man who rebuilt himself piece by piece without asking for anyone's permission. That's what healing really is, not forgetting the pain, but finally realizing it no longer controls you. She came back like a whisper in the middle of an ordinary day. No grand gesture, no apology wrapped in poetry, just a simple message that said, "Hey." It was short, harmless on the surface, but you felt the weight of it sink into your chest. For a split second, old feelings tried to crawl back, wearing the face of nostalgia. You remembered her laugh, the way she once leaned into your silence like it was safety. But then you took a slow breath and realized something had changed. You weren't that same man anymore. You had learned how to live without her, how to sleep without her voice, how to find comfort in your own stillness. You stared at that message for a long moment, not out of longing, but out of understanding. You knew why she reached out. It wasn't love that brought her back, it was memory. The kind that visits people when their new worlds start to crumble, when the excitement fades, and they start to crave the peace they once ran from. She wasn't missing you, she was missing the way she felt when she was with you. That's the thing about peace, it spoils people who aren't used to it. You replied, but not the way you once would have. Your words were calm, measured, polite. No attachment, no hidden meaning, just clarity. And for the first time, you didn't feel that old ache. You felt grounded. You realized that power isn't in ignoring the past, it's in not being moved by it anymore. You didn't need closure, and you didn't need her to stay. You had already made peace with what was gone. She came back searching for the old version of you, not knowing he no longer existed. Time taught you patience, but pain taught you boundaries. You stopped mistaking inconsistency for passion and silence for depth. You began to understand that not everyone who touches your heart deserves to stay there. The lessons came quietly at first, in moments that didn't look like lessons at all, ignored messages, half-hearted efforts, apologies that never came. You realized that love isn't supposed to make you anxious, that peace isn't something you should beg for. You wanted something steady, something real, something that didn't crumble every time you stopped holding it together. She tried to come back the way people do when they feel your energy has shifted, curious, cautious, and a little uncertain. She asked how you'd been, expecting to find the same softness she once took for granted. But you weren't that man anymore. You had learned the difference between being available and being accessible. Your peace had become sacred ground, and not everyone was welcome there. You no longer needed her to see your worth, you saw it yourself every time you said no to what used to break you. You stopped chasing closure from people who couldn't handle accountability. You learned that real love doesn't confuse you, it calms you. It doesn't make you question your value, it reminds you of it. When she spoke of missing what you both had, you only smiled, because you finally understood, she wasn't missing you, she was missing the version of herself that existed in your light. You didn't need to prove anything anymore. You were no longer seeking love to complete you, you had already found completeness in your own peace. Sometimes the most powerful act of love is protecting your heart from what once wounded it. There were nights when the past still found its way into your thoughts. It didn't knock, it just entered, softly, through familiar songs or old memories that lived deep inside you. You'd wonder what could have been if things had gone differently, if love had been enough to make her stay. But this time, the ache didn't consume you. You didn't spiral. You simply felt it, acknowledged it, and let it pass like a wave that no longer had the strength to pull you under. That was growth, the kind that doesn't need to be announced, only lived. You learned that moving on doesn't mean forgetting. It means accepting that some stories end without villains, without closure, without one last conversation. You stopped trying to rewrite the past in your head, stopped searching for reasons to justify the pain. Some things just break, and that's okay. Not everything is meant to last, but everything is meant to teach. You started forgiving, not her, but yourself. You forgave the version of you that stayed too long, that confused patience with self-sacrifice. You forgave the boy who thought love was something he had to earn. You realized forgiveness wasn't about letting her off the hook, it was about freeing yourself from the weight of what you couldn't control. You began to see that healing isn't loud. It's the small, quiet moments when peace finally sits where pain used to live. You could finally think of her without bitterness, remember without wishing, breathe without heaviness. That's when you knew you'd made it through, not because the memory disappeared, but because it no longer hurt to hold it. You didn't move on from her, you moved back into yourself. She saw you again one day, maybe in passing, maybe through a screen. The moment lasted only seconds, but in that short silence, everything changed. You weren't the same man she once knew. There was something different in your eyes now, something calm, certain, unshaken. You no longer carried that restless need to be understood or chosen. You stood taller, spoke slower, moved with purpose. The weight that once bent you had turned into strength. She noticed it immediately, the peace. The kind of peace she once mistook for distance but now realized was power. She tried to spark conversation, to test if there was still a spark left beneath the ashes. You smiled, kind but distant. You didn't avoid her, but you didn't invite her in either. It wasn't revenge, it was release. You had nothing to prove anymore, nothing to reclaim. You had already won the quiet battle that she didn't even know existed. You healed. She looked at you the way people look at something they once owned but can't touch anymore. Nostalgia flooded her expression, that soft ache of realizing she had lost something she didn't know how to keep. But it wasn't you she missed, it was the version of herself she became when you loved her right. She saw it now, the difference between being adored and being understood. You left her with grace, even when she didn't deserve it. And that grace became your power. You didn't need to say much, your peace spoke for you. She walked away this time knowing what she'd truly lost, not the man who once waited, but the man who finally learned to walk away without looking back. By the time life carried you further, the need to look back had faded into something gentle. You stopped counting the days since she left or measuring how far you'd come. Growth no longer felt like a race, it became a rhythm, something steady that moved quietly inside you. You began to understand that healing wasn't about proving your strength to anyone, it was about learning peace so deeply that chaos no longer felt familiar. You no longer tried to explain your silence or your distance. The people meant for you could feel your energy without you saying a word. You learned to live without expectations. You didn't chase attention anymore, you attracted alignment. What was real stayed, what wasn't simply faded away. You stopped needing validation from those who didn't understand your worth, because your calm had become its own kind of confidence. You realized that solitude wasn't loneliness, it was power disguised as stillness. You had spent so long trying to be understood that you forgot how to enjoy being seen by yourself. There were moments of reflection, quiet mornings where the light felt softer, where peace felt like a reward instead of a memory. You started choosing differently, not from fear, but from clarity. You no longer begged for love to stay, you created space for it to grow naturally. The right people didn't confuse you, they met you where you stood. You understood now that everything that left made space for something truer. The chaos that once thrilled you now tired you. You found beauty in calm, strength in patience, freedom in detachment. You were no longer surviving the past, you were simply living the present, grounded, steady, and untouched by the noise you once mistook for love. Now when you think of her, there's no ache left in your chest, just stillness. The kind that feels like closure without words. You can remember her laugh without your stomach tightening, remember her leaving without feeling hollow. The storm she once stirred inside you has finally gone quiet. What remains isn't pain, it's gratitude. Gratitude for the lesson, for the awakening, for the man it forced you to become. She may have broken something in you, but the rebuilding made you unshakable. You learned that love was never meant to cost you your peace, and that losing someone who couldn't value you was never truly a loss. You began to see that strength isn't about becoming colder, it's about becoming clearer. Real masculinity wasn't in how much you endured, but in how gracefully you let go. The boy who once chased validation had become a man who moved with purpose. You didn't need to be understood anymore, peace had become your language. You learned that sometimes closure isn't found in someone's apology, but in your own reflection when you realize you survived without it. She'll think of you again one day, maybe when her world grows quiet, maybe when she finally learns the difference between being loved and being kept. She'll remember the softness in your presence, the honesty in your silence, and it will hit her that she never lost you, you outgrew her. And you won't feel anger, just understanding. Because you no longer need her memory to validate your journey. You'll smile to yourself, not with pride, but with peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop searching for what's gone and start embracing who you've become. She'll always remember you, but you finally remembered yourself.